Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. Join me as we have a real-life discussion on how to change your life by changing your thoughts. Remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth. Welcome to the Create What You Speak podcast. My name is Sloan Fremont, and I'm your host. This week we're going to be talking about look outside the box. I've been feeling the past couple of weeks. I did a show a couple weeks ago called I Don't Know Where I Stand. And then I did a show last week that was called Change. And in both of those episodes, I've been feeling a little lost. Like I couldn't figure out where I stood. I mean, just like I said in that episode, I don't know where I stand. I don't know how I feel. I almost feel like I have no beliefs. And that's really weird because that's not comfortable. It's weird. It's confusing in all of these different emotions. So if you haven't listened to those episodes, definitely go back and listen to those. That'll give you a little more context for what we're going to talk about today. But I do finally feel like I got clarity on that. So I wanted to share with you my process, how I worked through this, and how just some different ideas on this, on how to maybe handle, if you're feeling a little bit like you just don't know what to do, or where to go, what to think. Hopefully what I talk through today will give you a little bit of clarity. That's my intention. So before we get into that, I want to remind you my course, The BS Method, How to Tell a Better Story in 5 minutes or Less, is now live. You can go to thebsmethod.com. And this course is it's really a step-by-step guide to help you start to change the stories, change the scripts that are playing in your head, and start to tell yourself a better story. And yes, it can be done in 5 minutes or less. I give you all the templates, the tools. I give you sample scripts. I give you ideas on how to customize the scripts for you. And this works. This absolutely works. This is how I changed my life. I've been there, done that. I still use it today. And it's a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? It works. It works. So visit thebsmethod.com to learn more. All right, so let's talk about this, about looking outside the box. I have so many notes here, so I'm going to try to talk through this in an organized way. But, you know, as I'm sure you're looking around, and we're all looking around still in this like what the fuck mode, right? And the what the fuck mode isn't going away. It's some days it gets worse, some days it's like an ebbs and flows, you know? And it's very clear to me, and maybe it is to you as well, that this box that we've been in as up, you know, prior to 2020, what we thought we knew is crumbling. Like everything is crumbling, right? These things that we thought we knew are no longer there. We're starting to see the truth of things. And what I have been struggling with is, okay, so how do I pull my attention away from those things that aren't working, and where do I put it, right? Where do I put my attention now, right? Because it's not so much a situation of completely pulling away, because we can't be, at least I don't feel I can't be completely like, you know, head in the sand about this stuff, but I also can't be so consumed with it that it just leaves me enraged or feeling hopeless or, you know, whatever. So how do we pull our attention away from what isn't working, and then where do we put it? And what I came to realize this week is that it's really time to re-educate ourselves on things and start to look outside of the box. And so I'm going to talk through what I mean by that. So one thing that I've noticed I've been doing is, especially recently when I've been in this state of confusion or not clear on really what I believed, was I've been looking outside to everyone else for what they think about what's going on, and using their thoughts almost as my own, as my answer to things. And so as I was thinking about that more this week, I'm like, but what about me? Like, what about my thoughts, right? And I haven't really been giving myself the time to digest those thoughts. And it's really hard right now to get, quote, true information with censorship and so much information being put out there, you know, purposefully or not, but it's out there, right? It feels like it's the basis of everything that we try to consume to get answers. And that is something that I think I've also allowed to cloud my judgment. I allowed that to be the excuse, or that to be the reason that I just couldn't get any clarity. And then I was kind of stuck in this like hopeless feeling loop of, back and forth. But as I thought about it more, and I thought about in the past kind of how I've handled things, and I reminded myself of really, I'm an intuitive being, right? We are all intuitive beings. We are all of us are given that gift of intuition as humans, as to guide us as our compass. And we having this intuitive sense within all of us is intuitive information will come to us. We can consume information. We can start to try to sift and sort and go through the information and not really know what's true and what's not. But those answers are going to come to us because we all have intuition, and we all have ways that our intuition speaks to us in ways that we can understand in what we're familiar with. And the thing about things right now is that there's just so much crumbling of this old world, of these old systems, that we don't know how any of this is going to unfold, right? We're still in the middle of it. We're not at the end where we have the answers that we so desperately want. So we're in the middle. We're still in progress of all this. And during all of this, the pieces aren't all unfolding at once, right? We want them to. We want just what's next, right? What's the deal? Like, what do I need to prepare for? What's happening right now, right? But that's not how this is happening. It's unfolding. It's like a slow burn, right? It's unfolding slowly, a little bit at a time. And so we don't have all the data to make sense of things. And I think that's why it's really critical right now to keep listening to everything, consuming, what we can and the best that we can, knowing what we're up against with censorship and so much disinformation, and really remembering that there is a universal order to things, right? The data that we consume, it will self-organize to give us clarity that we want. And it will working, with our intuition working for us, because our intuition is always working for us, whether we're paying attention to it or not. And remembering that and understanding that intuition and that data self-organizing, working together is going to help us come to the clarity of these answers that we're looking for. Now, is it going to come as quickly and as, perfectly laid out as we want it to? No, probably not. But that doesn't make it wrong or bad. That doesn't make it anything. There really makes it. There's nothing other than that's just what it is, right? We don't have to assign meaning to it. And so as we're going through this, and right now, because we're in it, right, we're in the middle of it, and we're seeing all these things, and we're like, how is this happening? Like, I can't understand. I can't even make sense of the world, right? And then, like, what I was experiencing, I was starting to look outside of myself more than I was allowing myself to have my own opinions or my own thoughts or even give myself the space to think about those things. And when I'm looking outside of myself, right, and I keep saying what other people are saying, right? So no new idea. So if we're all doing this, right, if we're all looking outside of ourselves because we're afraid to trust, because we don't know where to get information or how to even trust any information, we just keep saying what others are saying, and no ideas or opinions get presented, right? They're all kind of a spin of the same concepts or thoughts that just keep going in circles. And right now we're in this space of expanding our own consciousness. We're expanding our reality. It probably doesn't look like it or feel like it, but that's what's happening. We're getting outside of this box. We're being forced to re-educate ourselves and look at things differently, because there is no possible way we can just pretend the past year and a half didn't happen and just go on as if we're back in 2019. That's just not possible. So when we're not sharing our own ideas or having conversations about how we feel about things or what we think about things, we're not creating any space for our own expansion of our consciousness. And so we're not contributing our thoughts about how we feel or see things or what we even want for the future to go. So it's like this is how I felt, at least, of course, is that I was just spinning in the same opinions or thoughts, but I wasn't really getting anywhere. And so I think it's really important now to contribute really in an honest way and let ourselves shift and grow and learn through all this and make mistakes. have conversations with, about how we're feeling or how we see things, and not being afraid to do that, right? Not being afraid to have a different thought or have a different opinion about something based outside of what maybe your circle of people are talking about, or maybe if you're in your online space, like having a different opinion or thought or feeling or want about how things are than what you're seeing in your current space, whatever that looks like for you. I've noticed in myself, and again, I say this all the time on the show, but I'm giving you my opinion or my thoughts, my experience in this, with the hope that my examples will help you. So, of course, not everything I say is going to line up 100% with you. So take what works for you from all of this, and leave the rest. And I think really we lose out when we listen to everybody else and share their ideas, but not our own. Right? We need to start thinking about what we think and what we feel, and then start contributing in our circles in that way. And I know it can be tough right now to find those circles even, right? Because, I mean, let's face it, it's not an easy time to be a human being. But if we find people who are, if we have the desire to find people who are talking at the level that we want to talk, it goes back to that self-organization of the universe, and our wants and our desires all kind of line up. Those things are going to come into our space, but we have to be willing to have the thought and give ourselves the space to think the new thoughts or the different thoughts, or have the opinions and understand what our own opinion is, and be able to express that, to let those new people come in to our space and continue to be able to have those conversations. So through all of this, in having these new thoughts, or these being able to contribute in a way that expresses how you're feeling or you're thinking about things, we don't have to agree with everybody that we talk to, or everything that we hear. But these conversations, they give us a chance to learn and grow and expand in our own consciousness. Right now we're in this space where if you don't agree with people, they just, it's a shutdown, it's a cancel, it's a you're done, we have no use for you, right? But and I think that's what we see, at least. Okay, that's what we see. That doesn't, I don't believe that the majority of the people feel that way, but that's what's being presented. So it's easy for other people to pick up on that and then just continue to regurgitate that, right? So there's a lot of that going on, where people are picking up on things and doing the exact thing I'm talking about here, where they're not sharing their own thoughts or feelings about it. They're just picking up on what's popular and representing that. But for people who know that disagreements or not having the same opinion it can be a healthy thing. I think if you're willing to look at that, it's a way to learn and grow and expand, right? It's a way to expand your consciousness. Nobody wants to be around a cookie cutter version of themselves. There's no fun in that, right? There's no diversity. There's no challenge, right? It's boring. It's boring as hell to be around somebody who disagrees with you all the time. And, if you're talking to someone where you have another point of view, than what they have, it's a great way to get out of your own box. Like, that's what this episode's about, right? Getting out of your own box and re-educating yourself. And if you're willing to look at that, there's something to learn. And in those disagreements, I mean, that's where I feel it's even more interesting, right? It's even more interesting. I love when I have conversations with my boyfriend where I don't agree with what he's saying, because I want to know, okay, so why do you feel that way? Like, how did you come to that decision? Or what's your thinking behind that? And I'm not saying these in critical ways. I'm genuinely interested. Why? Like, why do you feel that way? Because he's had such different experiences as me, especially now being deployed, right? He has completely different experiences of how the past year has been than I have. And I'm interested in that because I want to know. I want to know more than what I think, because I know what I think. And I know how I get stuck in what I think. And I know I get unhappy with my being stuck in how I think. So I want to get outside of that box. So all these perspectives, they change our level of consciousness. They expand our level of consciousness. And remember, as I said at the beginning, these old systems are crumbling. All these things that we knew prior to 2020, in some way or other, are not functioning properly. That's very obvious. If you're looking out in the world, you can see that. And these conversations, I think at least, especially the ones where the conversations where you say how you feel. you say, how you feel, not what you're regurgitating how someone else feels that maybe you slightly agree with. It's saying how you feel, but also having these conversations where you disagree. It's one way to really start to re-educate ourselves and start to look outside of the box to form new opinions, form different ways of thinking, expand your thinking. And I asked this question at the beginning: how do we pull our attention away from what isn't working, and where do we put it? I think that was a really, really good question. And I think before we can answer that, we have to make the agreement with ourselves that we're going to look at everything, whether it's comfortable or not. Because it's really easy to get stuck in a personal preference that isn't based in facts. And so when we get stuck in our personal preferences, we stop looking at everything else. I'm guilty of this. I know I am. I know I do this. But in order to be able to expand and get outside of the box and re-educate ourselves, we have to make the agreement with ourselves. We're going to look at everything, whether it's comfortable or not. And we can start to ask ourselves questions around that uncomfortableness. So why am I uncomfortable? Why don't I like that? Why don't I trust that? What's really going on here? And asking yourself these questions, you may come back to the same answer you did at the beginning, and that's fine. But being able to expand on your own uncomfortableness, and I'm not talking about all this woke bullshit. I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about legit things that you are really wanting to understand more, but it's uncomfortable for you to try to get to the other side of that, right? And sometimes that happens in our own, like, dealing with our own traumas or our own past or our own patterns or our own behaviors, right? I'm talking about things that not things that make you feel guilty or bad, like the woke bullshit. I'm talking about things that genuinely mean something to you, that you feel like you want to grow or expand in. Like I've said so many times on the show about how I get sick of myself on my own topics, right? That's what I'm talking about here. Things that you're just sick of having the same go around with yourself on. And start to ask yourself, okay, so what's really going on? Why don't I trust that? And is it really just a personal preference here, or is there something more that I can learn from this? Is there something more that I can grow and expand on? And, doing this kind of inner work, because that's what this is. This is inner work. It's getting outside of the surface of what's going on with you and giving yourself the space to really dig in and find out, okay, what do I really think here? How do I really feel? This can be overwhelming. It can feel really, like I said, uncomfortable, and often uncomfortable for me has felt bad, and that has meant stop. But what I'm learning, and I did a show on this about becoming friends with your emotions. What I'm learning is when you start to move slowly into the emotions, into that discomfort, into those uncomfortable things that maybe you don't want to address. What I have found is that there's a lot on the other side that I wasn't letting myself look at, and a lot of good stuff, right? We can listen to all the voices that go on, that are being said. We can use our own discernment, and then we can narrow down. And I think this is key. After we've done this, after we've allowed ourselves to explore what we think we know, what we think, what we're interested in, what we want to dig into, but then also letting ourselves explore what we're not comfortable with, what those things that we don't want to look at because we're not comfortable with them. What this allows us to do when we see both sides, it lets us be in that place of narrowing it down to at least a couple of things that we know, right? A couple of things that you can be confident in, that you believe in. And then that gives you, because you've explored all your options, right? You're not just looking at it one-sided. You're not just looking at it one way. You're looking at it from all angles. And then you kind of have this foundation of what you believe, or where you stand with something. And then you can kind of take this, this wait and see approach, right? Because some things that we want to know the answer with, we're never going to have to make a decision on, right? We just want to know the information. But then there's going to be things that we do need to make a decision on, that we're struggling with, right? We don't know what's true. We're trying to get to what that truth means for us. But if you've done this work, like I'm talking about in this episode, if you've done this work to go through the thoughts, to look at both sides, to, get outside of the box and understand that we can't look at things the same way anymore. And that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. We have the opportunity to re-educate ourselves. you'll know that you've done the work that you needed to do to get to that point to trust yourself. You can trust yourself. You get to this point where you trust yourself. And that, to me, is key. That trust within yourself is that firm foundation that you can stand on, that you can go back to, that doesn't keep your energy scattered and running all over the place to try to find answers from everybody else, because you know your truth. You know what's true. You know what you believe. And you don't have to justify it to anybody else. And you may change your mind, and that's fine too. And you may learn that you make mistakes as you go through. All of that's fine. That's all part of being being a human. But once you've listened and you've learned and you've processed through all that and you've used your own discernment, then you can arrive at the answer to what it is that you're looking for. And I think that's, again, back to the question, how do we pull our attention away from what isn't working and where do we put it? I think we do this by trusting our own perception and focusing on that perception that we've come to. We've come to our own beliefs, our own perception, our own what's true for us, because we've done the work. We've considered what everything that I've talked about previous in this show. And I think then that's where we begin to put our energy and attention. So we're not, again, scattering our energy and attention around all over the place, running here, running there, trying to figure out what's that person saying today, or what's going on there, right? We've arrived at this calm and steady and secure place within ourselves, and that's where we put the energy and the attention to what our perception is, what we believe to be true. And again, always reserving the right when new information comes in. We can always change our mind, but we're going within, we're taking the time, we're using our own energy for our own discernment and not letting that energy scatter around everybody else, or about what everybody else is saying or doing or thinking. And I think in doing that, trusting our own perception, it allows us to be confident in ourselves and what we're seeing, because we've listened and we've opened ourselves up to maybe not agree with it all, but we use that, what we didn't agree with, as well as what we agreed with, to form our own opinions. And having our own opinion and being secure in that there's a level of confidence, of sureness, of truth that nobody can take away from you when you arrive at that place. That's you. You've done it. You've got yourself there. You're standing firm, and that is an amazing place to be. So don't sweep yourself under the rug. Don't let yourself just silence yourself out of fear because you don't know where you stand, or you're not sure how to deal with some of these emotions. And some of these emotions in the past have felt like stop, because they don't have to be. You can learn to dance with them. You can learn to live with them. You can learn to become friends with them, and you can let yourself shift and grow through all this. You can think about what you think, right? What's important to you and what you feel, and contribute that, because there's people that want to have these conversations with you. Other people want to understand and learn and grow and experience, right? By experiencing through other people. So keep listening and keep learning and keep taking it all in. And remember, go slow, right? This doesn't have to be a fast process. We don't have to boom, boom, boom. Now, yep, that's what I believe. No, we can take our time. We can take the slow approach to this, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so as I close out today talking about looking outside of the box and really learning and allowing ourselves to re-educate ourselves, there's an alternative idea I want to leave you with to think about with creating your reality as you go forward. And this is from the book called Getting Well Naturally, From the Soil to the Stomach. This is by Penny Kelly. I'll link to this in the show notes. But there's a chapter at the end where she starts to talk about, because the whole book is about the food system and healing, and about just a lot of different things in that way. That I really recommend this book. It's been very eye-opening to me. But there's a part at the end where she talks about, the chapter is called Thinking Ourselves Well, and it's talking about various aspects of pulling the book together. But she talks about this. She says, life in America seems to be organized around the concepts of grow up, get an education, get a job, get married, buy the best and the biggest house you can afford, establish a nuclear family, work hard to make as much money as possible, collect as many symbols of the good life as you can, retire, and travel before you die. What I am suggesting in this book is that we must begin to organize ourselves around a different set of concepts. They are similar yet powerfully different. They are grow to full maturity, commit to personal growth and the development of your natural potentials, learn to feed yourself, learn to educate yourself, learn to heal yourself, find work you like and be disciplined enough to figure out how to live on the money that work will make. Organize your work and home life to maintain balance and health. Marry if you can find someone who is as committed to your own development as to their own. Find a group of people you can live and work with and invest there to create a family of small businesses that all complement one another. Think twice, no 3 times before having a child. Work in such a way that you contribute to, support, and are celebrated by the entire family of people and businesses you are part of. Learn to enjoy your work as much as possible, even the parts you do not care for as much. Age wisely, allowing your work to change as you change and age. Give up the idea of death. Travel only when absolutely necessary and communicate with people and the world on an ongoing basis. I found that, I just loved that. I thought that was just such a great shift as you think about organizing your life. And especially with this episode talking about thinking outside of the box and really learning how to re-educate ourselves and coming to that answer to the question of how do we pull our attention away from what isn't working and where do we put it? So I wanted to offer that up as a different perspective this week. So, all right, that's it for this week on the topic of think outside of the box. Remember, if you'd like to learn more about my course, The BS Method, you can visit thebsmethod.com. If you have questions or comments or thoughts about this episode, my email is sloanfremont@pm.me. You can also visit my website, sloanfremont.com. Until next week, remember, question everything, trust yourself, and find your truth.